Hello, listeners. Brent's not here yet. Hey, Percy, I'm having some nuts. I figure it's better to eat them now than during the podcast because, unlike Brent, I don't eat while I'm podcasting. And that is a great question. No, but the funny thing is my favorite mic is a Shure Beta. This is just a SM48, but I cannot find my Shure Beta. It's put someplace safe and special, but I do not know where. Yep, just double checking. It's the 48. I don't know where my beta is. Every once in a while, I get on a little bit of a quest to find it, but I have not yet. I'm taking a few vacation days to just putter around the house coming up, and it's on. I'm gonna add it to my to-do list right now. I'm gonna look for my beta. Thank you for the reminder. Well, it's 3:01 and Brent's not here. I'm thinking I should just start without him. I'll let him join in progress. Yeah, it's 2 after, so Brent can join later. Wait, let me make sure this is on my calendar for the day. Sure enough, it says podcast invited by Brent Jensen. I have a few nuts in my teeth and then I'll start. All right, everyone. Welcome to the A/B Testing Podcast. I'm Alan, and Brent's not here. But I thought, it's time to podcast. Let's get going. So, what have I been up to lately? Well, work stuff. I figured something out just this week. I had more than one employee asking me, Alan, when are you ever going to take a vacation day? And for a long time, I had a hard time taking time off during work from home. Thought, no, if I'm here, I may as well work. Well, at Microsoft, as Brent would tell you if he were here, there you don't stop accruing vacation. There's a limit on how much you can carry over year to year, but there is no limit on accruing vacation days. However, I discovered just last week at Unity, there is a limit, and I've been at it for a while. So I have not been earning vacation days for quite a while. So I am taking quite a few days off here and there beginning next week. And then, of course, the last half of December when we don't want to touch anything to make sure everything, there's just not much going on. That's true in every company. That last 2 weeks of December, not much going on. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to look for my microphone. Thanks, Percy, for reminding me that I can't find my good microphone. And I'm going to look and see if Brent has pinged me. He has not. And I have some IKEA furniture to build, stuff like that. On the work front, the biggest thing new for me is that I have been getting into, for better or for worse, a big part of my job now is trying to stabilize our spending, not spending in general. I manage our Google contract now, a big part of it, and making sure that we are predictable in how we spend our GCP costs. I feel like it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I'm kind of getting the hang of it, but then I discover things I don't know. And I have regular meetings with finance, and they use words I've never heard of before, which is kind of fun. But that's it for me. And Brent? Oh, nothing for you? Okay. Well, let's get on to the topic of the show. And wouldn't it be funny if I managed to pull off a full solo podcast? It wouldn't be as good because we need Brent to make fun of, and we need Brent to ask questions that sometimes don't make sense, but sometimes he asks some really good ones too. So I'm hoping he'll show up. But in the meantime, I'm going to check the notes. And yeah, I should publish. I should put it on Instagram with that Instagram account I never use. And the question was, Alan, what's your setup? And if I didn't have a camera built into the top of my laptop versus my like a external camera, I would show you. But it's a pretty cool setup. I like it a lot. It works really well. This is the best setup we've had. So last time we talked about Brent's origin story. What happened? How did he get to be? How did he evolve? We kind of spent too much time, I think, on the beginning and not enough on how he got to modern testing. And I'm going to probably fall into the same trap, but try not to. We'll hit some key milestones along the way and go on. And we'll let Brent, again, join in. Maybe I should ping him on Slack. Maybe one of you should tag him on Slack. Can somebody at Brent? Oh, hey, Brent. We're live. I started the podcast without you. I don't know if you're speaking. Brent is not hearing a word I'm saying. No, Brent does not know how. Brent is connecting to audio. This is fun. This is. I'm not going to edit the beginning of the podcast. We'll let Brent join in. Brent, nod your head if you hear me. Okay, so it's just you we can't hear. So maybe I'll just continue with how I was doing before. We are full throttle into episode 128 of the A/B Testing Podcast, your podcast for learning about things like modern testing, agile leadership, and all kinds of crap. Wait, I thought I heard. Did I hear Brent, or I just imagine him when he showed me his teeth? Brent, say something. Brent is not talking.
My problem is that I had started the live stream as soon as it was clear. You kick-started the A testing podcast. Let's see, Perzy's there. Hi, Perzy. Any chance you can? Yeah, sure. I completely agree. All right, fair enough. Although for some reason your audio just died. Can you hear me? Nod your head if you can hear me. Fuck. Bye, y'all. I'll be right back. Oh, Alan. It says you're muted on Zoom. Alan says you're muted on Zoom. Alan, you are muted on Zoom. Zoom says you're muted.
Okay, I'm fixed.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to go quickly. I did a whole bunch of material I thought I was going to put straight into the podcast, but I never pressed record. So it was all a warm up. So we're going to go anyway.
All right, let's go.
Hey, everyone. I'm Alan.
I'm Brent.
And we're here for episode 128 of the A/B Testing Podcast, your wonderful podcast for all kinds of cool things.
It's a story.
No, don't sing.
About a lovely lady.
Do not sing. What have you been up to, Brent?
COVID-ding, I guess.
COVIDing is cool, man. I really like being home in the same chair all day, every day, and talking to people all day. It's great.
Yeah, my wife asked me why I'm going to work, and it's essentially because I can. Because I cannot stand, I really cannot stand work coming to home. I'd like to keep those lives separate.
I actually like working from here.
Yeah.
I was talking to the YouTube crowd before, and I'm actually taking some vacation days at home coming up because I was talking about the fact that at Microsoft, is it pronounced soft or soft? I'm not sure. Microsoft, you're limited on how much vacation you can carry forward from one year to the next, but you always accrue vacation. Unity, same rule, you limit on how much you can carry over, but there's also a limit on how much you can accrue. meaning
Okay.
I hit a max vacation I could possibly have, and I was no longer making more vacation from my weekly work.
Oh, I see.
Lame-o. So I'm taking some vacation days to do some chores around the house. So that's my first one's next week. I'm pretty excited. I'm going to work a 4-day week next week. That'll be fun. And the other thing I've been doing is I now own a bunch of our Google contract, and I'm doing a lot of work with finance to make sure our cost predictions are accurate, which is a whole lot of fun. That's sarcastic because I know how much I don't know,
Gotcha.
but we're getting closer. I'm faking it. I still find the right questions to ask, and we're getting there. We're getting there.
I have no doubt that you will. All right. The cost thing.
Wait, they say they can't hear me on the podcast on the YouTube thing.
Well, remember YouTube stream is behind.
Okay. Okay. So let me know in a minute. There was a time when you couldn't hear me when I was fixing stuff. I think they'll come back because nothing else is different. Everything should work. This is my mastery of technology. I was so excited to log on early, and then you were late, so I took time to make fun of you, and then I forgot to double check my audio because I was too busy trying to be cool. And I am imagining, given how everything's working here, unless the streaming stopped for some reason. Nope, stream's still going. I'm gonna guess they can hear me in a moment here, and I'm not gonna do anything different until we're just gonna go on because we have a recording to do, and we have 48 minutes left, ish.
So I'm on the. I don't.
Okay. Yep. They say Alan's audio is so much better now, and that's because I am using the proper. I'm actually using the microphone I've been speaking into instead of the shitty microphone on my laptop over here. So I would expect it got better.
And you're unmuted.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Oh, all right.
I mean, it does, but I mean, wish I had a way to meet you. Okay, shall we go directly into the meat of the show?
It's a story.
Oh God, what did I say? All right, last time we talked about how you. Even my dog is mad at you. We talked about how you got your start in testing and how you moved away from it and kind of how you stumbled into modern testing along the way. And I want to tell my half of the story today. And if hopefully my dog will shut up. I shut my office door. I don't know if I should let her in, let her cry in here, or then she'll be quiet, or what to do. So I'm just going to let her do her thing.
I think you should let her in.
In a bit. So
let her in.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So let's get started. And I'm going to count on you to ask questions appropriate or move me along as needed. I'll start at the beginning. I was born. No, I'll fast forward a little bit. I think most people know I was a music major in college. I graduated and I taught school for 4 years. I went back to grad school to get a master's in composition. While getting my master's, I learned how to use computers. I used a DOS-based music software notation program to do most of my work for grad school. I got really good at it. That company is no longer in business. I do have the source files still on some 5 1/4 inch floppy disks, so I can do nothing with them. But after I got out of grad school, I was actually planning on going back into teaching, but there was so much red tape after taking a year off to get back into teaching and fees involved that I just decided I was going to do something else first so I could make the money to go back to being a teacher. So I got a job as a bicycle messenger. I lived downtown Seattle. I did that for a while until it got really crappy. It was it was almost as toxic as some of my software teams I've worked on. But I bought a Sunday paper for you youngsters. A paper is the way people used to deliver news before we had Reddit. And I got a Sunday paper and went through the want ads. That's what we had before we had monster.com and LinkedIn. And I looked through all the want ads, just kind of circling some random jobs to apply for. This was 1992, maybe 93. I don't really remember. 93. And one of the jobs I applied for was to do tech support at a company that made music software. And I applied for the job and I went through a rather lengthy interview, which I finally got the job for, rather lengthy for an $8 an hour tech support job. I started about 2 weeks later. I showed up on my first day and they said, oh, by the way, you're also the software tester. Another few hours went by and someone said, by the way, you're also our network administrator. This is what happens when you join a 17-person company. I said, great. I've never used a network before this morning, but it'll be fun. So I learned as I went. Go ahead.
It already sounds like that you started off towards exactly what our friend Jimbo describes as the definition of a test position back in those days.
Someone who does the remainder.
Right. Everything else.
Well, what I did there was I did tech support, and on our peak days we got like 10 calls, and 90+% of my calls were actually helping them with Windows problems, not with problems with our product. Because Windows at this time, Windows 3.1, then there was Windows 3.1 with multimedia extensions. And people bought these sound cards and put them in their computer and tried to get them to work. And they didn't know how, and this was before plug and play. So I helped them edit their system any and win any file so their stuff would work. In general, not for our software. Once they got Windows to work, our stuff would work fine. Very few of my questions were about our software, but the rest of the time was fun because one of the programmers there took me under his wing and made me learn C. He taught me the 3 most important things you need to know about C.
What are those?
Pointers, pointers, and pointers. And I did that. We got a beta version of the first version of MS Test, and I began to use that to write some automation. I didn't know what I was doing. I just automated everything. It was really stupid, but it was a good learning experience for me. I learned how to use their API. I figured some stuff out. In the end, I ended up writing our setup programs because those were largely based on Visual Basic, that setup language at the time. So that was fun. I was doing some stuff. I got promoted all the way from $8 an hour, got a big raise to like $35,000 a year. And then for the second time, our CFO asked me to turn back the clock on our network servers so we could shove a few more sales into the current quarter. And I thought, and this was a public company, by the way. I thought, I thought, you know what? I don't feel good about this. So I quit. And by the way, okay. Not because of this, because of apparent worse things he did, he is banned from ever holding office in a public company again.
Okay.
So the just desserts had follow him around. So I quit, and I went home and I got out a paper, and there was a bunch of software testing jobs. I knew what testing was now. I thought I was good at it. I didn't think I was great at it. I thought I was good at it because I could write a bunch of MS Test automation. Raise your hand if you know a million testers like that today. And just substitute Selenium for MS Test. And I applied for a bunch of jobs. You know how I applied for them? I wrote up a resume and a cover letter, and I used my fax modem to fax it to people because that's what we did then. This was 1994, end of 94. And then maybe fall of 94, because my first day at Microsoft was whatever the first work day in January was in 1995. And I was hired as a contractor. And they hired me because I knew testing, I knew networking. And this is where I have the famous quote of, I talked to my manager. He handed me this list of test cases in Excel. And I said, "Go, great. When do you want these automated by?" And he said, "Oh no, we don't have time to automate. You need to run these every day." And I thought, and I was bored of that. That was like a Monday on. I was bored by Tuesday. So I automated them by Thursday and then did a bunch of other work in my other time. So I started breaking the rules around day 3. I worked there. This is another good story from then. It's the story where we had a bug quota. I was expected to find like 10 bugs a week. And of course, I would make sure I would make sure I reported 13 or 14 or 15 every week because I wanted to exceed. But if I found more, I would save them for the next week because I didn't want my well to dry out.
Oh, God.
So I worked there for a while, and fast forward, I was on a 6-month contract, and this was in the days of perma contract, but no one told me that it was just going to get renewed. So when my contract began to end, I interviewed for other jobs,
Okay.
and I was offered a job. It's a story I don't tell very often, but the job offer I got was from ST Labs.
I actually, when
This was the company. One of my interviews was with James Bach, and they offered me a job, and I took it. I said, yes, I'll take your job. And I went to my manager the next day and said, hey, my contract's up in June, beginning of June. So January, that's been like 5 months. But anyway, my contract's up, so I'm going to take another job. And he goes, looks at me with the face like, what? And I said, well, my contract's up, so I got another job. So just want to let you know, I'm gonna start there in 2 weeks. And this was a contract job at ST Labs, by the way. But I didn't, I was fine. I was young, healthy. It was good. So
wait,
go ahead.
pause.
Yeah.
Because you just said something that tweaks my head. So
Was it addition?
no.
Okay.
There was 8 months where I was a contractor. And you know how most contractors go through Volt. I did not. My company was Software Testing Labs. Is that the same company?
It could have been. Yeah, it did some contract. It was a contract testing place. I mean, it could have been.
And Bach was what? Because
Bach
I'd actually
ran it.
never. Wow. So
And I was going to
you're
work.
saying-
I was going to work at site in their office in Seattle, which I thought was great because I didn't want to commute to the east side anymore. So I told my boss that, and then I went to my office and I was doing my work because I didn't have short timers. It was fun. I like working in software. But then his boss came to my office and said, "Hey, I heard the news from Doug, and I want to know if there's a chance we could get you to work here at a full-time job." And I was so confused. I would love to have had a poker face, but I said a confused face. I go, oh, sure, that'd be an option. And they sent a goodie bag with an offer letter assigned to it to my house like the next day. And so, and I said, ST Labs, and I said, well, I got a full-time job counter offer from Microsoft. And I said, well, we can, I said, that's all right. I think I'm going to do this thing. So I did that. And of course, in their hurry to hire me, they got my, I was supposed to go to new employee orientation, but in their hurry to hire me, they got the date wrong. So I never went. I never went to new employee orientation. I skipped it. And then I worked on Windows 95 and networking. That finished. I worked on what was going to be Windows 97. And then I was part of Bill Gates discovering the internet. So I worked on IE2 and IE3. I didn't like working at Internet Explorer. So I moved back over to Windows 98. I'm going to fast forward. I was on Windows 98. I was doing a lot of API tests for networking, which was a ton of fun. I took all the GUI tests I did and I maxed them to 100 testing at the API level. So in hindsight, I don't think I need to test all that stuff, but I liked learning. I liked writing tests. I was learning to write code pretty well. In the end of 98, I was also writing most of the API tests for GDI and user. Those are the core components, the user level components of Windows. Windows 98 shipped. I moved to the Windows 2000 team. It was probably called something different then. And I worked on video capture drivers at the time when there were only about 3 cameras available in total. This would have been 1999 or late 98. I worked on those for a while. I worked for a guy named Brad Carpenter. It was a ton of fun, did a lot of work. There was no guidance on testing. I just wrote a lot of automation that made sense, mostly at the API level again. I learned COM. Remember COM? Component Object Model. And then,
I loved COM.
And then the marketing department said, "Hey man, we need to do another version of Windows." We said, "What?" And so we did another version of Windows. They pulled sort of a skeleton crew. This is the story I tell. I think I've told it on this podcast, where I knew what I wanted to do, and our GM knew what he wanted me to do. During Windows 98, we ignored debug Windows, and I love like turning up the warning levels all the way up in my compiler, runtime analysis all over the place. We ignored the debug version of Windows 98, and it does so much for application development because of all the additional checks and asserts. and it would not boot. Wouldn't boot. Just
Boots
like
booting's
check-
optional.
yeah, you couldn't make it. You couldn't get it even get very far in visualization. And I had a wonderful learning opportunity. So first off, I said I want to work on this, and Tom, our GM, said, "Oh, go talk to this guy leading our dev team." I talked to him. I thought he was a buffoon, and I said, "I don't want to work for this guy." We'll talk to Nick. Maybe you could go talk to Nick about it. So Nick is kind of not as much of a buffoon, and I ended up doing that job working for Nick. So I was going to be partnered with a person who was one of the pioneers in the Windows kernel, and he and I were going to pair on this. I was so excited I was going to get to learn, and then I think the stock went up and he retired. So I had to do it on my own. And so this is where I learned x86 assembly. And I'm probably going way out. I haven't got to modern testing yet, but I like to make stuff go. I like to, and I was mainly driven not because I wanted to work in assembly, because I knew the value of having a debug version of this thing, even if nobody was ever going to use it. And I had a ton of fun on this product. This is where I pioneered some of Microsoft's initial static analysis tools and fixed a bunch of those errors in Windows Millennium. ME, which also stands for Marketing Edition, because it was the reason marketing wanted us to ship it. Remember, at that time, Windows was the ship vehicle for a lot of products. You can just go to the internet and download stuff like Internet Hearts and other crap like that. They wanted a version of Windows to ship with.
Right. There was no app store then.
Right. So this is actually, we're finally getting somewhere. So after that shipped, our GM or our VP went on to take over Windows CE at Microsoft. So I went with him and worked on that. I managed the test team that did all of our driver, kernel, everything low level. Actually, everything except what didn't I? I didn't do graphics. Eventually I did graphics. So I ended up managing a huge chunk of the test team. I decided I wanted to get out of being a manager for a while. It wasn't I don't like managing. I love managing. I don't really like managing at Microsoft that much. So my manager said, "Well, what do you get?" My manager said, "I want you, Windows just made these test architects. I want you to be a test architect." So I became the first test architect outside of core Windows over in Windows CE. And that's where I joined the test architect group, where we had these surreal discussions. This is also where I got a little bit of imposter syndrome, and I began reading books on testing. And I read a book on testing, and I thought, "Oh, I know so much about testing. Oh, now I feel like a test architect." And then I read another one, and I thought, "Oh, now I'm a little bit confused." And then I read a third one and said, "Oh, now I think I need to form my own opinions, because there's a lot of BS in this technology." So that's how I got thinking about testing. So fast forward, also on that team, I built a CI system because people were breaking the build, stuff was breaking. So we put a gate in place where tests had to run. Certainly wasn't continuous deployment, but we made people go through a
I was going to say
check.
Pause, because back then we didn't
call it CI. We called it a gate.
Yeah, a gate or a gauntlet, right? We didn't really have CI per se, because like the goals and the what happened.
But what I'm even without a title, we can get out of the semantics of it. Okay. In backsplaining or in hindsight, I was slowing the team down to speed them up. And I didn't know why I was doing it. I'd never heard of lean at the time or anything, but I knew if we slowed down a little bit upstream, we would be better downstream. And that happened. So I worked on that org for a while. I ended up managing a small tools team. So it's kind of one of those ICs, high-level ICs that manages a few people versus a manager managing a lot of people. And that worked well for me. But there was an opportunity when Harry Robinson, name drop, Harry went to Google. And he was working in an organization called Engineering Excellence, which at the time under John DeVon reported to Bill Gates, and Engineering Excellence reported to John DeVon. I want to go get that job. But I got that job as a test architect. I started doing technical teaching. That sounds stupid. Yeah, I guess it was. I taught testing to testers and designed some courses, gave some courses, ended up running that team. I was Microsoft's director of test excellence. I was in that role when I wrote How We Test Software at Microsoft. Some of you may remember that gem. And
It's not that old.
then it was during that time that I met a man named Brent Jensen.
Wait,
We did this last time where you couldn't remember years again.
no. Because how did you get on the TLT?
Well, I was director of test excellence, and part of that job was to play sort of the chief of staff for the Microsoft test leadership team.
Okay, got it.
So that's, I think, where I think maybe Whitaker had introduced us just either before or during, but I was getting you to come to those meetings and be a part of that group. And then at somewhere in there, you began coming to these test architect group meetings again as well. Right? And that's where this podcast was born.
It was.
We would have these conversations where Brent we would have good conversations. And as much as I make fun of Brent, I respect him. And I think he's smart and does a lot of good stuff, but I know I can give him shit. And we'll actually, by having a more vigorous debate, we'll actually get to a good solution. I think the reason the principles have held up, if you compare them to the ones I originally wrote, what we have now, they're fixed because we were able to work together and debate and do those things. But we would have such animated discussions during these test architect group meetings that Michael Hunter, who I believe is now at Tableau, said, "You guys should do a podcast." We thought, and then the podcast was born sometime in 2014. Is that right?
You guys can go look it
do
up.
the math and figure that out.
Yeah.
So at this point, I am still tester. But I haven't really done that much testing. It was probably since, actually the last time I did full-time testing is like I do testing or test automation from as the majority of my day would have been Windows 98. Windows 2000 testing video capture drivers. After that, it was making debug versions of Windows, working on low-level components. I ended up being the person that debugged the kernel crashes and the stress runs overnight. And I love that stuff. When I moved on to Windows CE, I was a manager, so I wasn't testing that much. I did a little bit of brute force automation once in a while, but I was mainly actually figuring out, I was doing, again, debugging. I love debugging. I ended up doing a lot of it. When I joined Test Excellence Group, I for sure wasn't doing any testing. When I moved to Microsoft, Lync was Communicator, then it became Lync, and then it became Skype for Business later. But I worked on that. Even there, I was coaching testers. I was teaching testers to do exploratory testing, not developers, but testers, and having fun with that. From there, I went to Xbox, where I worked on infrastructure.
I forgot that there were two teams we were on. Just again, twice.
That's right. You were on the server side. Holy crap.
Yeah, I was on Lync. I
forgot
Lync.
you worked on server. I worked on the client team.
Yeah, although no, when you were on Lync, I was in Media Center, and then Media Center through a series of reorgs. That's how I got on the Xbox. And I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
Was there ever a time I was on Lync server? I don't remember if we were ever on Lync at the same time.
Watch Brent quit and join Unity right when I retire.
No, actually. So yeah.
Okay, so I want to get to the modern testing part. So I've been in all these roles. I've been test architect, manager. We began talking.
You were
probably around the time I was in Xbox doing infrastructure that Brent, to kind of tie these timelines together, that Brent was doing agile stuff in Bing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, cool. And for the record, the infrastructure, I can't even call it a team. I ran infrastructure on Xbox as a virtual team. It was all just open source style, inner source style.
There's one thing actually so by that time you were no longer, well, obviously you were no longer in the education org.
Right.
Um,
I moved out. I think I moved from. I went from the education org or the engineering excellence org to Link and then to Xbox.
but you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, even when you left, you still ran community events.
Yeah, I kept running not test leadership team, but there was a at one point our kind of off, maybe it's relevant. We had a technical TCN, technical
QTech.
Well, TCN came to me and said, "Hey, we want to have a group of senior level people in the testing profession." Remember, we're still siloed. There's still massive test teams. There's still 10,000 testers at Microsoft. So just the senior people want to get together because we have funding to do that. And they had a lot of money to feed us food. We went to baseball games. It was soccer games. It was great. And then we had the quality and testing excellence community, which I ran for about 2 years. And then TCN went away and I got my time back. So I was in Xbox. Brent was learning Agile. I'm getting him to talk on panels and be part of these QTech conversations. Is Agile still very different? But it's our conversations. Like in that time, you came up with accelerate the achievement of shippable quality. I thought, oh yeah, I get that. So when Xbox shipped, I went on a sabbatical and I came back. Actually, I took a ton of time off. I went to Australia for a month, came back for a few months, went to France for 3 months, and then came back. But during that time, I was working on the stupid science project known as Astoria, which was the dumb thing to make Windows apps. Sorry, to make Android apps run on Windows Phone. I thought it would have been a much easier effort just to make the Windows shell run on the Android phone, but whatever, I'm not in charge. So that product was never going to ship. So, but I wanted to learn Java and I wanted to learn Linux, and it was fun. I just did random things, took it on. It was great. I got bored. I got so bored. I loved my manager, but I was bored. And I told him I was bored. He said, "Yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't want you to leave, but maybe you should." So I did. And this is where I was, because we didn't have a test team. This was the big move that happened then is I skipped a whole big important chunk. In the early parts of this org, we moved from Xbox to this stupid app and we didn't have any testers. So this is my first time coaching developers on how to write tests. I can't believe I almost skipped this part. I did most of it through code review. I would ask questions like, "Hey, where are the tests?" "Oh yeah, we're going to get those in the next check-in." No. You should probably check in the tests now." "Really?" "Yeah, because why? Does the code work?" "Oh, I get where you're going. Yeah, I'm going to write some tests." And so I have a few of those conversations. Eventually gets to, "Oh, great, you have tests." And then I critique the tests. "Why does your test doing 15 different things? When your test fails, how about you, like, I've gone through this pain for you. So when your test fails, if your test fails, no, when your test fails, maybe you should have some logging to know why. Well, I'll just hook up the debugger. Is that really the most optimal way to do? Oh, I get, yeah. Oh, that's cool. Good idea." And then for all these things, the more I bring them up, and then other people it almost got to be a "what would Alan say?" And then after a while, I wasn't needed to pay attention to code reviews because all the questions I was asking about improving tests were getting asked by others. So it was great. And again, I didn't care too much because the product was stupid. So then I moved from there to, this was fun. I moved to what eventually became Microsoft Teams. And we all know the story. I loved the product for a while, and they didn't have any testers. They hired me because I knew about testing. And a big part of my job was to help developers do better testing. And I did on some places, and other places, they were just happy to have their code suck. And
Why?
I ended up, I won some battles, I lost some others, and what they gave me was $1 million budget to go hire contractors offshore to help get this testing done. The idea was it for it to be a stopgap so they keep moving forward while they address their backlog of missing tests. And to be fair, they had 100. This is, I'm sure you've all seen this. They had 100% or not 100. They had like seriously like 90+% code coverage on their unit tests across the board.
Nice.
And what does that mean for quality?
It means it's perfect. Ship it. Or
Yeah.
well, you're missing 5%, but who cares?
Yeah, there is so much, and this a conversation I've been having even today is the gap between works and good is much bigger than people think.
And code coverage covers which of those topics?
It covers works kind of.
Does
covers,
it?
Covers
It
some
just
of works.
means your test covers the code. It doesn't mean the code works.
But if your test passed anyway. So I learned a lot because actually I found out, this is where I really found out, because I was doing less code review and more kind of hands-on working with folks and getting the test. This is where I really discovered that, wait a minute, developers can really do good testing. And even though I complained about them missing some stuff that could have been automated, when I said, okay, let's do I hate it, but we did a bug bash. Let's work on finding bugs. And I gave them ideas. I gave them some heuristics. I gave them Elizabeth Henderson's cheat sheet. And we had developers find bugs that I think only the best testers in my career would have found. They absolutely were able to pick. They just needed to know it was okay to use their brains and engage and do some testing. And I had light bulbs going off, said, oh my God, I spent so much of my career, and we need to backtrack a little bit here. When I was in test excellence, my job was to celebrate the career and profession of the software tester at Microsoft. We had 10,000 testers, and I worked on career paths extensively to describe what it would be like for testers to grow all the way up to the highest levels. And man, the cognitive dissonance when I taught developers to be that good in testing that quickly, it's like, holy shit, I wish I knew then what I knew now, because I did a bunch of shit wrong. So I learned a lot there about teaching developers to test, and we weren't very agile, but I learned a lot of things about shipping in an agile way. So we were able to ship our services on demand, which was great. We shipped our front end once a week, and I wish we could have shipped it more often. And that's, if I would have stayed, we would have got to a stage where we did that. I know after I left, they did so much of non-feature flagging and shoving stuff in for that weekly release that customers asked them to slow down the cadence. I don't know if that's better or not now, but we learned, we did a lot of all the cool deployment tricks with blue-green deployments. And we actually deployed our what was going to be the next week's build in rings. They still call them rings there, rings or circles. So like we just pushed some buttons. First, it went to just me and my organization. And then once our test team did their stuff, said, yeah, this is pretty good. We'd roll that out to all of the organization, then to all of Microsoft before we'd release externally. And I love that phased rollout. We did it in steps versus a slider, but learned a lot about how to deploy in the real world. So I got fed up with my manager for being a dick, and I quit. I had a new job. I talked to the folks at Unity, and they said, hey, I'm thinking of leaving Microsoft. Do you have any jobs? Because they had approached me like 2 years before. I said, actually, I don't have that other job. I have a new job. And I said, what is it? We need someone to run our services QA. I said, question one, what is services QA? And they said, oh, all of our, and they didn't, and the guy was my boss for all, didn't really know. It's like, oh, we have a bunch of stuff that it's in the internet. In the internet? Like, and what it ended up being is the way I described it. It was all the parts of Unity that use the internet. It was everything from the website to some stuff in the editor to things that were peer services like analytics and ads. And anyway, this was a great job because all my interviews were all about getting to know fit and feel and not about stupid whiteboard things. And they never even asked for my resume until they forgot that they needed it in order to give me an offer.
They're like, oh, hey,
oh yeah,
Alan.
by the way, I just realized I need a resume from you. That's cool. Here's one. And so I started I didn't of course, I spent my last two teams not having QA, but I didn't join. And you remember this now because we were talking a lot about this as I joined. And I still remember our very last podcast at Microsoft when we drank some tequila together while we podcasted. That
Group
must have been a while back. And I didn't join Unity with like, oh, now I'm going to get rid of these testers. I joined Unity thinking this could be fun to manage a QA team. And the challenge there for me was learning how to manage a globally distributed team. Very little of my team was in Seattle with me or Bellevue. Worldwide, the Unity Bellevue office is known as the Seattle office because who knows where Bellevue is.
Right.
So it wasn't, this is a lot fresher in my mind, but I remember a point when I realized, you know what, this is because it was agile-ish across the board. So all of my org were embedded into other teams. And I was there to help them and coach them, help them to do the right things and give them advice and things.
Okay.
And that's what I realized. You maybe remember this on a podcast. I said, it's really a community. And then like literally like less than a month later, I was rereading Agile Testing and Lisa and Janet said the same thing in their book. Talking about, an Agile manager's job or Agile test manager's job is to run a community. Paraphrase. I thought, oh, well, I'm glad I'm just discovering this now. And it got to a point maybe 6 months in when I realized that the right thing for me to do for Unity's business and for the career of these people was to get rid of them all. And I fired none, but I helped all of them move into different roles at Unity, into dev roles, into quality coach roles, into DevOps roles. One of our best, he listens to the podcast. I don't want to stroke his ego, but we have someone well respected, and he knows I'm talking about him. Someone well respected across our entire org, who was a QA lead reporting to me, and now he's like one of the most respected DevOps folks across the org. It's probably the most, but So I didn't set out to. It just seemed like the right thing to do. So within 18 months or so, or maybe 2 years. It took me 2 years. And it's funny how Brent used to joke about how I changed jobs every 18 months to 2 years. I said, no, I don't. But Mother Effer's right.
Well, he did. But again, it's Confucius say, find the job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
I'm going to have to talk about even my new job now or what's happened since then. After about 2 years, my team was gone. So I moved into what was then called our monetization org, which is ads and some other businesses. Now it's a much bigger org and I have many more cool responsibilities. But it was really those first 2 years of me at Unity and going through that process is where we solidified and in my head really embraced what is modern testing.
That was the question I was going to get to is like, to me, your experience on Teams feels very much like how I felt about my experience on Xbox, right? You and I had fundamentally different experiences in that organization.
I was lucky enough to be put into a position where my role was to do whatever the hell I wanted, as long as it provided value. So it was good. It was easy to have fun.
Which one?
Anyway, go on.
Xbox.
In Xbox, yeah.
No, when I left Xbox, a big part of it, and I tell people, don't leave a team, go to a team. In that particular move, I did both. I was very much motivated to get out of Xbox because I thought the culture was just entirely dysfunctional. And then I wanted to go to a team that claimed that they were doing Agile and was actually happy about it, and they were doing services, right? I wanted to go and find a place where I could learn by entrenching myself how software works differently in that environment. And it sounds like Teams was that for you. Teams was sort of your Xbox. It was
I learned so many of the basic because it was there because the things I found I love to do and I learned a lot in Teams. And I used to say on Teams that it wasn't until I ran all of the infrastructure in DevOps that I really began to have an influence over quality. And I've heard other people say that too. Like there's so much ability to have influence in a good DevOps team. So I learned that there. I had so much influence over the quality by controlling our deployments and having an understanding of how to deploy. So that was a big, I learned a lot of basis. It was just a little bit of a toxic environment. And it wasn't a product in the end I loved anymore because there were product mistakes being made in choosing to, again, going back to lean. I'd also developed my own principles about doing small things well, and those things weren't happening. I didn't have control over that. I just had control over the end of the sausage maker. But I learned a lot about influencing quality and how I can control that from a infrastructure point of view. And the same thing is then 3 years later, or 2.5 years later, when I got the hang of it, I realized that now I own those same things plus program management, and don't get confused on the Microsoft program management, but I control the aspects of how our engineering teams do their estimations and deliver, and get them to think about the things they need to think about to be ready to work and to be done. And now I have even more control over the quality of our products because I control the whole sausage making machine. The other teams I work with focus on product development. Everything I do and my teams do enables them or blocks them. It puts the right guardrails up, I should say, so they can deliver quickly and effectively and with quality. So I definitely learned some of that basis in teams. But going into my time at Unity, while I loved accelerate the achievement of quality, and I think we had already had the modern versus traditional much earlier. I believe I was still at Microsoft when we had that debate. I can't quite remember.
I don't think so. I'll look.
I feel like we recorded that one in Lincoln Square. I have a memory. I could be wrong, but worth looking up. But it was definitely while I was experiencing a team or teams moving from traditional, even it was actually they're moving from agile or fake agile. And again, Lisa will probably listen to this episode eventually. Agile testing, as she and Janet describe it, is wonderful. Too many times in my experience, it was still the embedded tester was the one doing all of the testing. And that's unfortunate. But what I saw is teams where the embedded tester was doing all the testing and wanted to move to real whole team quality.
When did you move to Unity? What year?
January. It's been almost 4 years because Barack Obama and I both quit our jobs on the same day.
So we recorded that on September 2017.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, it was after. So, but then the principles came up, and I really think we formed. So I don't know if I've answered, I think without answering it directly and walking through that, I think maybe I've answered the question of how my career ended up getting to modern testing. It was actually rarely purposeful.
Here's the thing that I think that I realized that is common in both of our stories. Number one, there was an element of just had it with the dysfunction that caused us to move on. The team where
Yes.
and then move on to a team where number one, we both had autonomy. We both had autonomy around how we would execute software. And we both made a decision to try out this agile lean thing. And furthermore, realized, holy effing crap, that completely works so much better than pretty much the best thing I had learned in the last 20 years.
I'm drawn towards efficiency.
Yeah.
In fact, I loathe inefficiency. So if I see a better way of doing something, I'm drawn toward it. And it's just something I've definitely discovered, especially in the last few years.
Yeah, I remember and again, you weren't pursuing you said it like, hey, the first thing I did was realize I needed to get rid of my team. That
No,
actually,
but it actually took several months for me to get. That wasn't what I wanted to do at all. But it got to a point. I was like, oh God, yeah. I'm the orb, the light that I was being drawn toward was one where we didn't have dedicated testers in our services orgs.
no, but that wasn't what you were trying to do. What you
Right,
were
right,
tr-
right. No.
what you were
I'm
trying to do is get rid of the what do we call it? The codependency,
yeah. I was trying. I was trying to run
the
an effective
safety
team.
net, right?
And
I
worth
look
pointing out
back.
that one thing really cool to call out is during that time, one of the things I did in building this community was I had 90% of my team plus some guests hang out with me in Bellevue for 3 days, and Brent came and gave a talk.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. There's 3 times you asked me to come and do a talk. One was that Agile panel way back in the
That
day.
was way back at Microsoft at QTech.
The second one was around the combined engineering transformation. I had left Bing at that time and I was executing it in the Power BI org. You asked me to come and talk about that. I remember very fondly that one because your joke then. Do you remember what your joke was when you introduced me?
No.
You said some of you may or may not know this person. I don't know how he's going to do a 30-minute talk because I'm fairly certain he can't even pronounce his name in short than 10 minutes.
All true. I would say the same thing today. That's not a joke. That's just expectations.
Yeah, so it was well framed because you started it off with that challenge, and I remember I nailed my time. But you're right. If you hadn't done that, I probably would have been the cause for going over. And the third time was a sort of a data culture discussion. It was actually essentially the modern data-oriented techniques for looking at and improving quality, right? And that actually eventually became one of the decks that AST did or asked me to do, and it's up on YouTube now for those who care. I mean, but I'm still thinking through your story and the similarity, and I think the similarity is these were sort of things that we've been actively thinking about for a while.
Well, I could maybe even generalize this more is one of the things we wanted to do when we started the podcast was help people who are going through any one of these transformational changes and help them understand there was a greener grass on the other side. And one thing common between you and I is we embrace change. We're not afraid of change. We like to try new things a lot, and we're not worried about screwing stuff up. We just want to try new stuff.
Yep. The concept of best practices not humbles me. That would be the exact opposite direction. Annoys, irritates me greatly, right? Best practices are now, right? Anyone who studies systematics knows that once you have a current practice, you got it. Eventually, the whole system readjusts and constructs new problems. Like example, email came out. Email's fantastic. It's fast, right? I don't have to write a letter. I can just type a letter, send it to Alan in 5 minutes, and I don't have to call him going, hey, did you get my letter yet? Did you get my letter yet? But then what happens is it creates a new problem. Okay, it reduced the friction also for all the people who I don't want to get crap from. So now I'm buried by emails. I get calls from Alan. Hey, Brent, I sent you an email like 3 days ago that you haven't responded yet, right? I get the same, goes back to the same initial problem.
I've never called Brent, but I do remember this guy, Carl, on Windows CE I'd see him walk up to my door and just stand there in my doorway. We had offices with doors. He'd say, did you get my mail? I don't know. Well, can you read it?
I get that all the time.
No, I can't read.
I probably got your mail. I mean, I
Send
have.
me send me a dead tree mail.
Yeah.
All right. So I like the parallels there. The parallels. We got to kind of wrap up here. So
So one
that's kind of where
question.
I got where I'm at. And ask me a question. Yeah.
One question. So for me, I can remember like yesterday when it all clicked in and why I knew this was actually correct versus me just rolling the dice and go, I'm pretty confident this is going to work, but not actually knowing. Did you have such an aha moment? Where you like, oh yeah, I am never ever going back.
I don't, kind of. And for me, we had talked about this stuff and I had done it in practice. I thought, well, maybe there's more context I'm missing and it's not working. And it's probably not only going to work if I'm there and it's just too much. And then we camped with the principals and we thought they were going to keep on changing for a long time, but they really haven't changed. And I presented them at Test Bash in 2018, I believe. And the number of people that came out, this is a test conference. I thought I was going to scare the crap out of them. Because I thought it would be, I didn't. And the number of people that came up to me afterwards and said, oh my God, you're describing exactly what I do. Thanks for putting a name to it. I thought, what? Because I had given a talk a year earlier called Testing Without Testers. And I don't think I even believed, it was mainly how I did it and how it kind of could be done and how I was cheating by using contract testers. But it was really talking about coaching developers. But moving from there to the principles and covering everything that kind of has to work together. And so much of that, as you and I will agree, is stolen from Lean and the Lean startup and agile testing.
Yep.
That we can kind of backsplain our way into that, but it really was probably Test Bash when I thought when it became something I thought worked for me to something I knew could work for everyone. That was my aha.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, I've had groups I don't even work with at Unity as late as last week pull me into a Slack channel conversation on, hey, Alan, we're doing this thing. I can't tell you what it is. How do you think modern testing principles would apply here? It's like, I don't even know you. And you're talking about, oh my God.
Wait, is modern testing principles like a well-known brand within Unity?
No, I mean, no, I have done zero evangelism inside of Unity. People just find it and go, oh, hey, this looks valuable. And they track me down. They go, oh, and this guy works here. This is cool.
Or the other way around, like, who the hell is this guy telling us what to do? LinkedIn search. Angry. What the hell? Right. It probably likely goes the other way.
This has happened more than once.
That's cool. I remember back in the day, no one's asked me to do this in a while, but back in the day, I had teams coming out of the woodwork asking me to walk them and onboard them to Agile.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. All right, man, we got to close it up, but we're back on for every 2 weeks-ish now, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Hope you all enjoy the new time, new bat place, all that stuff. I'm still Alan.
I'm Brent.
We'll see you next time on the A/B Testing Podcast. TM. All right, I'm going to stop recording.
Let's see.
Great one. Thanks all 4 of you for watching. That was fun, but you're welcome anytime. Maybe those questions we didn't get to should go into the mailbag because I saw them come in. I thought I'm not going to have a time to answer those. So I can talk about my setup. I can talk about time in
this chat auto
excellence. I thought you froze for a second. You stopped.
No. Does the chat auto refresh?
I think so. I think they stopped talking. Anyway,
it does because Percy law.
Okay, yeah, the delay there, yeah. Okay, so that'll happen. Thanks everyone for listening in, and here's your freebie. for all of our Patreon subscribers. We just don't charge